then let's say you want to be an entrepreneur, right? And you started your first business, and you really wanted to do well, right? So you obviously you don't want to risk everything, right? Because you wanted to succeed. On the other hand, you also almost want to fail as a part of the journey, right? How do you make this balance of risking it all, because hey, if I fail, it's also fine, and playing it safe, so because if you so the odds aren't too big that you'll actually not succeed.
Right. Well, I mean, there I should also perhaps be a bit more clear that I don't set out to fail. Every single time I do something, I believe it's going to work. So make sure to do your research right, but set yourself up in a way that you can iterate very, very quickly. Most of the startups that succeeds are the ones that are very agile, the ones that can quickly take a negative situation and spin something positive out of it. The ones that don't cling on to their business models for too long while seeing that it's not going to work, but the ones who are willing to sit back and say, okay, we can fundamentally change everything. Is it worth changing? And that's called doing a pivot. And we've done, I think, 2 or 3 pivots in our time. So it is important to that if you set out to do something, that you believe it's going to work. Because
Right.
if you don't believe it's going to work, and you're just saying like, oh yeah, there's like a 1 in a million chance that people will actually buy this product or use this service, then you're not doing business, and you're just playing the lottery.
Yeah.
So they're basically, my standpoint is, don't play the lottery, believe in what you're doing. But if you believe in what you're doing and you still fail, then you challenge those beliefs. And that's the moment in which you start to grow. Because if you already start out with the mentality of like, yeah, I'm not sure about this, then all you're going to be doing is confirming some of the beliefs or some of the doubts that you had. Whilst if you believe in something and then it turns out that it's wrong, then you're challenging fundamental thought processes of yours. And I believe that's like that moment when you step outside of your comfort zone, that's where growth happens.
That's true. Yeah. All right. So then the next perception, or common saying about entrepreneurs is, if you start a startup nowadays, right, in the market that we have now, you have to focus on a niche to excel.
Yes. It's like in a general sense, I would say yes, because if you're focusing on a niche, that means that you're going to have fewer competitors. And nowadays, the market, especially in the digital space, is very, very crowded. It's a red ocean. So finding like that little blue ocean in between all the things that are out there, and you have a product and there's a market for that product, then you are much more likely to succeed than, for example, if I was to build another influencer platform right now. That being said, it always depends on execution. Like I think I would advise starting entrepreneurs to really look for that niche, to look for that blue ocean. However, that being said, very experienced entrepreneurs, they have the capability and the resources to also enter certain red ocean markets. I mean,
Right.
if you look at TikTok, for example, who would have predicted 2 years ago that someone would be able to compete with Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, and the likes? Not just compete in general, but to be able to compete at such a scale and such a speed.
Yep.
Of course, there were many people saying that like these short content platforms, they were going to be on the rise, and we saw the same thing with Vine. Like Vine was a very popular platform. It just didn't have a very good business execution behind it. So it was clear that something like this was going to come again. but to be able to pull it off at such a speed and such a scale, that is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
So that's why I think my answer for that would be, for starting entrepreneurs, focus on a niche. For experienced entrepreneurs, you have a bit more options out there.
Right.
But of course, this is just my opinion. This is not.
No, for sure. Yeah. That's why I'm asking you, right? Can you elaborate a bit more on how to identify, or what makes an ocean blue for those non-business people?
Right. So what makes an ocean blue is that there are few or no existing solutions to a problem, right? And I think that's also where most people go wrong, is that they just simply look for that blue ocean. They just simply try to develop a product straight away, and they're not even sure that there is a product. That they're not even sure that there is an ocean out there. So that's for example, that's what we did with Student Up. We had this kind of idea, and we had this like small problem validation, because we knew some people who had this problem, but really it wasn't an ocean. It was a little pond in my backyard. It was it was not it was the market wasn't big enough for it. And that, I think, that is the most fundamental thing that you have to do when you set out to start a business, is identify a problem and make sure that problem is so severe that there is a market for it. If you find a solution, people are gonna use your product. So yeah, I'd say finding the best way to find to find a good problem is to simply do different things. Work at companies, work at startups, do your own little freelance projects, and you will identify areas and sectors where you think that the market isn't developed enough, and then you can take that and you can validate it with more people to make sure that you're not the only one facing that problem. And that's how you can then get to your niche, basically.
No. Okay. All right. So then the next perception that I have for you, or the next statement that I have for you, is you have to be a domain expert before starting your startup.
No, I don't agree with that.
No.
It's you have a lot of domain experts, especially in the technology technology sectors, who will never build a good company, because they simply don't have they might have the technology, they might have the product, but if you don't know how to get that product to your end users, then what are you building? You're just building something nice for show. And I would say you can always get more domain knowledge if you have a good idea, and you demonstrate it, or you're able to demonstrate that you can pull it off. If you have the right people on board, then you can hire those people. So right. For example, for Kibo, none of us are career coaches, but why do we need a career coach if we can simply use a part of our investment to hire career coaches, to get the industry knowledge, to get all the expert knowledge that we need, and simply feed it into our algorithms. So of course, for tech startups, if you don't have a tech person on board, it becomes significantly more difficult, and investors usually require a founding team to be at least half to 2/3 technical. Right. So that makes things a bit more difficult at times, but I'm still a strong believer in the fact that if you have what it takes to manage people and manage money properly, then you don't have to be a domain expert in something to make it work. It's all about the execution.
I think that's a big motivation booster for you guys out there who have an idea, but you're not proficient in that idea. Take Ronan and Kibo as an example. You can definitely work around that if your idea is great. The last statement that I have for you is you have to be a risk taker.
Yes. Yes. I mean, what you're doing when you're starting a company, most of the time you're going to be leaving behind a lot of things. One of these is a stable income. Even if you decide to work on the side, then what you're leaving out is, you know, personal relationships, free time. You know, there's always going to be a huge trade-off if you start your own company, and either way, it's going to be a risk. Whether you actually follow through with that risk, that you have to make dependent on your situation. So, you know, like, let's say you're in the last year of your studies, right? You have a great idea, you've validated your assumptions, you know that the product has a market, right? But in order for you to really focus on this and push through with it, you have to quit your studies. Is that worth it? You know, it's and then on both sides, you know, it's a risk giving up your studies. At the same time, it's a risk going through with your studies. And that's what makes this entire process a little bit complicated, because people only see the risk of actually doing it, and then, you know, giving up the normal way that society dictates to you. But at the same time, it's a risk not doing it. If you catch what I'm saying.
I get what you mean.
I would argue that, like, from my personal standpoint, it is a bigger risk not giving it up if you know that everything is going to work. But to many people, it's going to be a bigger risk of giving it up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Interesting perspective. Yeah.
So that's why it's, you know, it's very difficult to say. Like, I definitely think you have to be a risk taker, because, like I said, you know, if you don't try to get outside of your comfort zone, then you're not going to grow. You know, so like there are certain risks that you have to take, especially also in the business context. That's why my initial answer was, you know, yes, you have to be a risk taker. But then if you look at the fundamental part of, you know, what is a risk, then it becomes very blurry.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, I think I've never thought about it in that sense. Yeah, I think it's a very good question to ask yourself, because a lot of times you kind of know internally, right, what you want to do, but, you know, society and those standards, you know, tell you a different story, whether you should start, for example, your company or not, or pursue whatever you want to pursue. So then asking yourself those types of questions, like, hey, which one is the bigger risk for me, right, as a person? I think that's a good question. Like, it's kind of the sense of what would I regret more, right?
So, you know, like, if you asked Mark Zuckerberg, for example, what was the risk for him? The risk that he took was simply not having his degree. But for him, the biggest risk was to stay at university.
Yeah, and miss out on everything that he set out to achieve.
Exactly. So, you know, like, there, obviously it becomes a little bit inverted in terms of, like, you have to be a risk taker, because for his case, you could argue that he took the path of the lowest risk.
Right.
But to the outside, it'll always be the bigger risk of starting your own thing, you know?
Yeah. I love that. I really like that mindset. So now, you know, you've taken the choice that you deemed to be wise back then and became an entrepreneur.